Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi A14, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started with this episode.
Well, it's morning here in California, and thank you very much for having me today as your guest. I really appreciate it, and I'm always happy to help wherever I can. That's serving others is my purpose. So in California, I grew up here back in the 60s, and I graduated from college and went into the corporate world, spent 27 years in sort of what I would call the multi-billion-dollar Fortune 100 corporate space. And I was in sales and product management and project management, and ultimately the biggest success I had was in running larger teams. And I had a team of about 35, and we did about $500 million in annual construction, about $4 million in profit on an annual basis. And that was 27 years, and then they decided to move to Dallas, and I was ready for a change. And in 2010, I left the big corporate world, and I brought my corporate tools and tips and techniques to small business. I really wanted to run my own practice. I really wanted to work for myself instead of working for somebody else all the time. And I think that's a dream that many people have. And I invested in coaching education, and I joined the Focal Point coaching team, which is powered by Brian Tracy. And I spent 7 years with them learning how to be the best coach I could be, some of the best coaches in the world, tools, techniques, all kinds of training. And then in 2017, as you could see the digital revolution really just taking hold, I joined Jeff Walker's Internet Alchemy team, which is all about digital marketing. And I've spent the last 3.5 years really in that digital marketing space, because it's the wave of the future. I don't think anybody's arguing about that anymore. At one time, it was funny, people would tell me they didn't need a website. When I first started in 2010, people say, I don't need a website. Can you imagine trying to run a business today without having a website? Digital marketing is the key. And so, I spent the last 10 years working with a variety of different small business owners. So I provide that class of education very quickly, very efficiently. So they're not having to go back through 4 years of school or do an MBA. And that's my model. That's how I work with my clients.
Since this is a period that is particularly challenging, can you tell us how is it in California where you are there in terms of how people are maybe adapting to the situation also of COVID-19?
Well, it's all about the pivot. There are, some businesses are thriving in COVID. So essential businesses, you could look across the board, the stock market's up. Some businesses are thriving, but the small business that, particularly in retail or events, because they shut down the economy here, and I think they did it all around the world, they weren't able to get customers into their stores. So whether it was retail or restaurants or events, really, really struggling and having to pivot. And realistically, building products and services that can be purchased and acquired online in a digital marketplace.
I was reading on your website where it was written, actually, where you put make the right move. And I sort of I got fascinated by that. Looking at the situation, looking at the circumstances that are facing all of us and businesses today, what would you consider as the best move that businesses should make to remain in business? Because that is the most important thing at the moment.
I think it's a process and a strategy more than anything else. It's just being goal-centric, being very focused on what your goals are. You might have had to adjust your goals. You might have had to adjust your strategies because adversity, COVID-19 struck, and you have to shift. But you need to be goal-centric and create a plan that allows you to move your business in the direction that you need it to move. Planning is the first thing. 1 minute planning will save 10 minutes in execution. And as we look forward into that plan, it starts with, first off, you got to make sure that you and your team have the right attitude and that you're willing to learn new things. And frankly, whenever you're learning new things, you're going to be making some mistakes. So you got to be able to accept those and move forward. That's part of the learning process, part of the growth process. And then just getting super clear on your goals, the team that you need, the steps in the right moves. So I was a chess player when I was younger, competitive chess player, played in the U.S. Chess Championships back in 1976. And in chess, it's very simple. You're trying to take the king, and you move your pieces and put them in the right places, do a better job than your opponent, and you win the game. And in business, it's very, very similar, right? If you take the assets that you have, there's you're the most important, most valuable asset that you have, the one thing you have 100% control over. There's your team, and then you might have some equipment, and you might have some capital, and essentially you're going to have to position those in the right places to be most effective to achieve your goals. But everything is goal-centric. And I would say that investing in people and investing in technology are two things that you have to do today to ensure success.
All right, thank you so much for that, Mr. John. You see, talking about a business tip for us is something very important because, like you said in the beginning of the video, you were not satisfied with the way the system is set up for you in terms of jobs. So you need more. You were hungry, like Les Brown would say, that you got to be hungry if you really want to get more out of life. So I sort of appreciate that a lot. Now, there is something that a lot of people probably haven't take note of, in that the disruption in our economy is not only linked to COVID-19. Even before COVID-19, a lot of people have been talking about the idea of going online, take your business online,
COVID-19 just accentuated the urgency around moving online. The world was moving that way anyways. And the reality is that you can now serve a global marketplace online. You can serve. I have clients in Switzerland, and I have clients in Venezuela and Taiwan. You have to manage the time zones, but before digital marketing or before the digital activity that was available, I couldn't do that. And now you can. So that wave started long before COVID-19, but COVID-19 just said, oh, it's more urgent now.
Now, when we talk of business tip, managing business, because it's a complex thing, of course, you are a coach, so you know this perfectly well. Now, the thing I'm trying to sort of drive at here now is the idea of continuous learning. Now, as a coach, how do you see the importance of continuous learning in the business environment?
Absolutely critical. Continuous learning is a requirement, and it's not just now, it's not today, it's been around forever. How do I get a little better today than I was yesterday? And it never stops. I might decide to change businesses, you might decide to retire or whatever, but continuous learning is the key. And every day we're trying to get just a little bit better than yesterday. One of my favorite terms is Kaizen. That's the Japanese term of continuous, constant, incremental improvement. Let's get a little better every day. I tell a story, if you were able to get 1/10 of 1% better at something every day, could you do that? So that's about being 4 minutes or so more efficient every day. And if you could do that, and I don't think it's that hard, but if you could do that, continuously get better, you would literally be about 26% better at the end of 1 year, and it's compounding. So every month you're 2% better, but it's 2% compounded on top of 2%, and that first year is 26%, but literally you could be 50 or 60% better. And that depends on the amount of time you're investing in your business, the revenue that you're generating. It's all about constant, continuous, incremental improvement.
Now, I want to ask something about business management, because this is something a lot of people are finding some difficulty in. Since you are a coach, I don't know if you want to share something with us in what businesses need to know, and that is what business owners need to know about the key aspect of business management.
Well, there's all the technical sides. And today I think we really have this interesting gap. We've got the business owners, seasoned, experienced, but they're not technically proficient necessarily. And then we have this young talent that's grown up with the internet and grown up with digital, and they're super technically proficient, but they don't have the expertise, they don't have the experience of business. So I think you really need to marry those two things together to get to achieve the synergy that allows you to grow faster. Just to take off a lot faster. Understand that it's great to have a digital system, it's great to have technology, but if your people aren't in the right place, if they're not in the right mindset, then they can't access or use the technology effectively. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I'm not saying don't have strategy, but you got to have the people component in place, and you really have to have a clear digital strategy today.
That is absolutely important. It's absolutely important. Now, yesterday, I interviewed a lady who is doing business. They have a kind of innovative business in Abuja, Nigeria. So the question I was asking her, because of course we are trying to consider people who maybe are at home now, they are locked down because of the challenges, of course, that we all have. But it is also the time for us to start businesses, no? And some of them don't even know where to start from. So I was asking, like, how do you go about research the market and try to produce something that the people need? So I want to throw the same question to you. When you want to go into business, those things like study the market, try to understand what the people need before you then go into produce and things like that. How do you usually approach those kind of areas?
So I think you can just go try to study the market and create a product. I mean, that's one way to do it. The long-term, step back and ask yourself, why are people in business in the first place? Why do they start a business? It's because they want control, they want more joy, they want more opportunity in their life. And if you want that, you want to start the right business. And it's about a business and a product that serves the marketplace, but I think you have to understand yourself. And what do you really enjoy? What brings you joy? You know, the saying that if you do what you love, you never have to work a day in your life. That's the model that you really want to operate with, because business is not easy. Being an entrepreneur isn't less difficult or less hard than being a corporate executive or a corporate manager. In fact, many people will tell you it's even harder. They're working longer hours, but they love it. That's the joy. And so when you find that joy, then all the work, all the adversity, everything else, I mean, you're willing to climb those mountains, climb those hurdles. So I think it is certainly studying the marketplace. That's an important piece, but I think it's also understanding you and what do you love to do? What do you really have that is unique or special in the way you think, the what's important to you, what you value, and creating products and services around that serve the marketplace. Because when you're in that space, now you're ready to take on the challenges. If you're not behind it 100%, 1,000%, it's going to be double or triple hard.
1,000%. I sort of like that a lot. 1,000%. And I know what you mean by that. Okay, now let's put it this way. It is very, very hard to start a business and run it. Why should somebody take that kind of sacrifice? Why?
Okay, so why did I take that sacrifice? I had a good corporate job. I was making good money, paying the bills, putting my kids through college, doing all that kind of stuff. And here's the thing. I wanted control over my life. I wanted to be able to go see my son's football games, which were at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I wanted to work when I wanted to work. I wanted to be able to take the ceiling off of my income. I wanted to be able to make a bigger difference, make a bigger impact. And now, not everybody wants to be a business owner, and certainly not everybody's cut out for being a business owner. You look at the statistics, 80% of businesses, small businesses, don't make it to the 5th year. But if you have those drives, those desires, that's when you're ready to step out, and you have to be ready and willing to deal with the adversity. There's a lot of learning. I was an expert in my field in the corporate space. When it came to running a small business, I had to learn a lot of things. I never was a finance guy, never an accounting guy. But guess what? You got to have your accounting and finances together when you run a small business. You got to learn how to do it, and it's not always fun. Sometimes it's a little painful. It has to happen. And if you're not in the right place, it's going to be really hard.
That's true. That is why it is important, like you said before, the continuous learning is crucial. It's very important if you want to remain in business, because one thing is to start a business. The other one, of course, is to remain in business. So it is very important, the continuous learning. Now, what I'm want to remain with now is also you, in that you were in the corporate world. When did you realize that you were going to leave that corporate world and start out and strike out on your own? Is it because something happened, or is it an idea that will be coming to you? Because there are a lot of people out there today who think that they want to be on their own, but they never make the move. And many of them will never make the move. So for you, how did it happen? Was it like a kind of one day you just decided you don't want to work for somebody or for a company anymore? Or is this something that you were building for some time, then one day you decide to make the move?
Well, I think for me, the idea was a build-up. I was traveling 5 days a week for corporate business, didn't get to see my family that much. I was missing out on a lot of things, and I was just becoming more and more disappointed, disillusioned, unhappy with the corporate role that I was playing. And it was interesting because I had conversations with my wife at the time, and she did not like the idea of me starting my own business or changing, because she's very security conscious and really encouraged me to stay in the corporate world. So I didn't. But then in 2010, the company I worked for, now this was the Great Recession, right? Remember, this is when we had the financial meltdown. And the company I worked for decided to move to Dallas, Texas. And I live in California. My kids are in high school, middle school, and moving to Dallas was just not something I wanted to do. I did not want to uproot my kids. And so I was right there. It was like, okay, go back into corporate, find another corporate job. And if you do, sign up. You're in it for the long haul. Or is it time to start a new business? And I decided that was the right time. And so I was made a decision to identify the business I wanted to be in. I actually took a couple of different assessments to help me understand what I was really good at, some of the things that I could really do and do well, make an impact with. Made a decision in the coaching space, invested in the coaching space, and haven't looked back. Was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I mean, I'm much happier today than I ever was in the corporate environment.
That's interesting. Okay. You decided to stop working in the corporate world and decide to strike out on your own, which of course means that you jump into a different terrain, working in a different attitude, which means you are going to experience something. Okay, let's say you are going to experience a lot of joy. But here, you're also going to experience some difficulty, challenges, because like you already said, it is difficult to strike out for yourself running a business. You are going to have to put in 1,000%, okay? So now, share with us, what has been your main challenges in running your own business?
Well, understand that initially it is the adversity of having to run your business and learn all these other new tools, like I say, it's financial systems, sales systems, CRM systems. There's all kinds of things that you have to learn. And so there's a real impact on your time, because no matter what happens, there's still only 24 hours in a day. And so you have to really get dialed in on what's most important, because you can't do it all at once. And the rule of thumb is to pick the one thing that's most important and knock it out, kill it, finish it, and then go on to the next one. If you try to do 10 things at once, you'll never make any progress. It just doesn't work that way. And because there is so much challenge in learning new things, and you're going to make mistakes, you really have to stay focused on it and manage your time effectively. The other thing that I learned is, and this was I didn't know I was going to learn this, but in the corporate world, everybody's got an education, everybody's familiar with goals, everybody's familiar with benchmarking, everybody's familiar with, we're all speaking the same language. We all grew up the same way. But once you move to small business, now these people haven't been in the corporate world. Maybe they didn't go to college. Maybe they're in the trades. That doesn't mean they're any good. They're not good. They're probably really good at what they are, but they don't speak the same language. They don't have the same mindset. They don't have the same attitude. And that was really one of my biggest, I would say it was my biggest growth curve, is learning and understanding the small business mindset.
Because you can do it, it means other people can do it. But if we look at the statistics, if we look at the world we live in, whether you are talking of the situation in the US or in Italy where I live, or in UK, we see that only a small fraction of the population are really into the production of the goods and services we consume. And the majority of the people continuously consume it, which means that there are a lot of space for people to come in and do something new and move out maybe from the corporate world and stand for something of their own. Of course, I'm not saying that if you remain in the corporate world, you are useless. I'm only saying that, okay, when you start a business, that is, you are in playing a different ball game altogether. So the question for you now, Mr. John, is why do you think the majority of the people never make this move? Why?
Okay, so why don't people change? I think that's the question you're asking me, right?
Yeah.
Even when change looks good, I mean, and the reason is the resistance comes from uncomfortability, right? They don't know with certainty that that's going to be effective. There's a rule that I follow called Gleischer's formula for behavioral change, and basically it says, hey, everybody is resistant to change. And the way you overcome that change is there's so much pain, so much gain, and there's a process that allows you to get there. But the reality is that the degree of change, the intensity of change, increases the intensity of resistance. And some people just aren't willing to do that. You look at abusive relationships. You know, you have women and men that stay in abusive relationships, even though they could leave and get to something better, but they don't know what something better is, and so they stay where they're at. It's a real odd psychological phenomenon, but it's the same process. You know, change is hard. Change takes energy, effort. Sometimes it costs money. It takes time, and there's no guarantee. So we stay where we're at.
We stay where we are. Okay, now I want to ask you something important also. This is a kind of a speculation that I hear often, so I want your take on it. That some people say that well, if you are doing business because you are in US, in that it's easier to do business in US. Of course, you said before that you were in a place, then you have to relocate to another place, even within US also. So the question for you is it really true that businesses only function because you are in US or something? But of course, it's also true that businesses are in everywhere now. Because I remember, for example, a very important book that I read, which was The Science of Getting Rich by Walter Wallace. He said that except, of course, you are going into a rock. Wherever you are, you can do business. No. So I'm really throwing the question to you. Are you able to do business because you are only in a particular part of the world, or you can really do business almost anywhere you are? Of course, I'm asking you the question because you are a business coach. Apart from just owning a business, you are a coach, you are a teacher of business. So you know both the principle and also the practical. So that is why I'm really throwing the question to you.
I would tell you it could be done any place. It doesn't matter. In fact, the internet digital revolution has allowed us to, make and sell products around the world. Doesn't matter. You know, business has been around since the beginning of time. I mean, there's challenges, obviously. I think some countries have more regulations, less regulations. There's different rules that you have to operate with. But in every arena, you'll find successful businesses. And it doesn't matter. And now today, if you have a cell phone, you could have a business. You don't even need a computer. A cell phone is, it's more powerful than anything I had until 10 years ago.
I'm talking of you as a coach, and therefore the people you are coaching. What do you tell them is the biggest challenge of the 21st century business? Because the kind of business that we have today is relatively different. Peter Drucker and other people, of course, have been talking about the idea of moving from a purely physical goods to service economy, talking of the knowledge economy, where the economy that is being run is not only about only the product, but also the service. If you are in service, of course, the internet, of course, have revolutionized it, and it also has its own complexity. So what do you see, or what do you teach your students as the biggest challenge of the 21st century business?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is the oldest challenge, and that's people. People are the hardest things to understand on the planet. We're all a little bit different. If you think about it, technology has changed rapidly. In fact, the pace of change from a technology standpoint is accelerating. It's not decelerating, and people haven't changed at all. The way we think, the way we process, the way we move, and so that particular challenge, especially when it comes to scale, if you're just going to run a solo business, you're the only person. You have total control over you. But as soon as you introduce other employees, other service providers, now you're introducing other people. And that challenge is going to be the biggest challenge forever. It's never going to change. However, I will tell you that technology is the next biggest challenge. And it's important that we understand and we put those in that order, people and then technology, because technology is going to continue to change. It's accelerating. The pace of change is accelerating. And it's interesting, these days, it's not so much the big eating the small as it is the fast eating the slow. So those people that can change and shift and move and use technology and get their people to use that technology effectively are going to have a big advantage in the marketplace.
You see, I was reading an article recently, and I'm going to quote a part of it here. It said that it is a terrible time for small businesses. Of course, I'm considering the idea that big businesses and small businesses, they are basically not exactly the same thing, even though maybe some of the things might be the same. Of course, looking at the time that we are today, I found this article to be actually very important. And the writer, Kerry Hannon, cited a source which reads, "The truth is, no one knows what next because no one has seen anything like the current intersection of crisis." So we are talking of the situation that is relatively complex. How do you see the future of small businesses? Because that article just said that if you're a small business or if you play small, there are chances that you might have some challenges. So what is your take on that?
Well, I think business is here to stay. I mean, forever people will want their own control and want their ability to manage their lives more effectively and not want to depend on or work for somebody else for their living and their livelihood. I don't think that's going away anymore. I think it's the opportunity for small business success is greater today than it was yesterday. The internet, digital technology allows us to serve the world globally. And so I think that opportunity exists, and I don't think small business is going anywhere. I do think that the challenge with small business is, you don't have the reserves. So if you have a corporation and you make a mistake and it costs you $1 million, you have $1 million and then you go on. But if you are a small business owner and you make a mistake and it costs you $1 million, that might be the end of the business. Right? You might not even have $1 million in fact to do it. So the big difference is that the small business owner, has to be super cautious about their risks and their investments because they don't have a big set of reserves that they can lean on. Most often they don't. And one of our goals as a small business owner is to build up those reserves so that when adversity strikes, and you don't get to decide when adversity strikes, you only get to decide how to respond, and you've got the reserves and the wherewithal to be able to deal with and respond effectively to adversity. As a small business owner, I think the most important thing is to manage your attitude, because stuff is going to come at you. There's all kinds of new things you don't know. They might change the laws. They might do this. All kinds of things, and you have to be prepared to respond effectively. Responding effectively means that you're going to proactively go out there and tackle and pivot and shift and do whatever it takes to make your business survive. And if you don't have the right attitude, and I wrote this book back in 2017, it's called Checkmate: Winning Tactics for Translating Ideas into Money. I'm not certain I really like the title, but the idea is my system, my process, 7 steps. But the very first thing in that list is attitude. And if you don't have the right attitude, you don't need to read the rest of the book. You don't need to start a business, because that attitude, without that, the ability to overcome adversity, to deal with whatever gets thrown your way, it's better just to stay. It's a lot easier to make money just to collect a paycheck than it is to go be a business owner.
Absolutely. And maybe that also the why. That is the why a lot of people don't want to change, because at the end of the month you cash in the check. So why do you have to hustle?
It's simple. It's easy. It's comfortable. You can count on it.
All right. Now, John, you mentioned something that is very important, which is attitude. Now, the thing about attitude is that you either have it or you don't. And when you don't, that is only one thing. You either learn to cultivate it or you're never going to have it. So as a coach, how do you approach this attitude change? Because you are saying, now referring also to your book, if you don't have the right attitude for business, you are never going to succeed in it. And it's supposed to be plain and simple. So how do we cultivate that right attitude for business?
Really, so you're looking at continuous improvement, and there's sort of what I call above the line and below the line approaches, sort of the victor-victim model. So the victor, right, the right attitude is somebody that's proactive, responsible, takes ownership, has vision, believes in doing the best they can every time. And the victim attitude is really somebody that might blame somebody else or makes excuses or is negative or in denial or subscribes to this scarcity mindset that there's not enough to go around, so why should I even bother? So if you have a model that says, okay, here's the right attitude, here's the less effective attitude or the victim attitude, then we can talk about, what do we have to do to stay above the line? How can I stay above here? And by the way, you can't stay up there 100% of the time. Stuff's going to happen. The idea is to recognize it when you've slipped below the line and then fight and scratch and claw and get back above the line. And if you can't do it by yourself, raise your hand and go get some help. I mean, that's absolutely critical. Now, you mentioned something, say that people can't change. People will change if there's enough value. Now, that doesn't mean that they all will see the value, but if you have somebody that's borderline victim behavior or something like that, and you can explain the value of operating more at a higher level victor behavior, then they might slowly move in that direction, and then we reinforce every one of those moves, reward and reinforce every one of those moves, so we continue that activity. And then at the same time, when they dip below the line, we ask them, what's going on? How can I help you? Now, some people will never move above the line. Some people will never do it. In which case, if you're a small business owner, you cannot afford to have one of those guys on the team because they are, it's catching. It's catching. That behavior is when somebody looks and says, well, that person does this and succeeds, then they think they can. And eventually, it can spread throughout your whole organization. So as soon as you find somebody that is unable or unwilling to move in the right direction, then you have to make a different kind of decision with your business.
I'm going to write that down. It's very important. It can spread like the virus.
It does. It's crazy. And I will tell you that I would say 8 out of 10 businesses that I serve, we find somebody like that. And sometimes we can, sort of rehabilitate them and their attitude, and sometimes we can't. And that one thing is probably what's holding back that business from greater success.
Thank you so much. Again, it is important to reiterate that attitude is everything. Attitude is very, very important. And because we are in a moment that is really very complicated, like we said before in the video, I want to believe that your students do have some worries, some preoccupation that they tell you about this time. Doing business about this time. Of course, for some people, it could be the easiest way if you have been preparing for it. Because if you are not prepared, because they say opportunity will always come. But it is the people who will benefit from the opportunity are those who prepare for it. If you are not prepared for it, then it is nothing. So what are the preoccupations or what are your students worried about of this particular time of doing business in 2021? And what do you usually tell them? Maybe they want to start a business or continuously run the one that they have.
Well, so I think there's two things. COVID isn't over. It's not done. And so, they're worried about health for themselves, health for their family, health for their employees. They're worried about, how am I going to start back up, right? Because everybody's, the vast majority of workers have gone into this remote space. And so do I bring them back into the office or the shop, or do we continue to work remotely? And then I think you've got a couple sort of classic worries. Taxes are a worry, and that's never going to change. And governmental regulations, compliance issues are never going to change. I mean, we saw in California, and I don't know Italy as well, but in California, the government came in and just unilaterally said, okay, we're going to shut down. We're non-essential businesses don't get to work anymore. You don't get to make any more money, and that's been obviously a big issue. And I clearly understand there's COVID and we're having to deal with it. And I'm not going back to argue whether that was right or wrong. But here's the government coming in saying you can't do it anymore. And so there's a fear from sort of a compliance and regulation standpoint and taxes that those fears will never go away. But I think then it's just employee health, and then technology, and how can I compete? How can I be more effective? And how can I generate more revenue? How can I have better balance in my life? Those are some of the other things that small business owners are wrestling with.
And what do you tell them in a way to sort of reassure them so that they can keep on fighting? COVID-19 is a leveler in that after COVID-19, the world that we have is going to be different. Of course, it's not going to turn upside down, but it's going to be a completely different kind of world. So what do you tell your students so that they can continue to have the courage to fight on? Because if there was no COVID-19, it was going to be difficult anyway. This just makes it more difficult. It doesn't mean we are going to give up. We are going to keep on fighting. So what do you tell them?
Well, I mean, COVID isn't the first thing that came in and wiped everybody out. Look in history. I mean, there's been adversity that has hit us and hit humanity since the beginning of time. And humans are remarkably resilient, remarkably creative. We can always come up with solutions and ideas, but we have to be receptive and we have to be willing to change, which isn't always easy. Not everybody's willing to change as quickly. But COVID is just the last in a long list of disasters and adversity that has struck the planet, and we've recovered. And the new normal is not going to be the same as the old normal. We're going to have to figure it out. Those people that are willing and ready to adapt to change, those people that can change faster, are going to have an advantage.
We are going to adapt. I like that. We are going to have to adapt to the system. In fact, we always adapt. That is how we survive. Because if we don't adapt, then we would have been gone thousands of years ago. All right, that'll be about it for the trouble. Now, the concluding part of it usually has some recommendation. Now, let's call it the solution. So what do you think are the good business tips that people should adapt to today in order to survive in businesses?
Everything has to be goal-centric. You have to understand where you're going, what you're trying to achieve. And then you need to create a plan that allows you to move from where you are today to that goal, whatever that happens to be. And then you have to have a process to course correct that plan, because that plan is the best thinking that we have today, but tomorrow something's new is going to happen, the day after that, next week, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to course correct that plan all the time. It's sort of like the airplane that's going from New York to Los Angeles. It's off course most of the time, but there's this autopilot thing that just continues to course correct it, and it lands. So, so we've got to have a course correction strategy that allows us to evaluate the data that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis and correct our path so that we can achieve our goal. And focus on the root cause of success. Now, most people will say, hey, the way we measure success in business is how much money we make. But money's a result of the actions that you take. And you have to focus in on those actions that generate the money, and you want to go down to the root cause. What is the very first set of actions that's necessary to generate the results that we're looking for? So focusing in on the root cause is really the driver, and it could be adversity, it could be attitude. That might be the root cause of what is either holding you back or accelerating you. And then you think about clarity. Do we have consistency? Do we have the right team? Do we have the right people? Do we have the right technology? All of those things are going to come into play. But everything is based on your goal and your plan.
Thank you so much for that. Now, during the one of the questions, at least more than one question I remember, we talked about small businesses. Now, what is your recommendation? What do you think they should do? Because I think this moment is particularly challenging for most people that are running small businesses now. Of course, not only small businesses, but okay, let's say that is the one we are going to be focusing on in this particular part. So, what is your recommendation for them to remain afloat?
Well, I think pivot, shift, right? What if it's not working? You have to make a different move. You have to shift, and for a lot of people, they don't know what that shift looks like. And my recommendation is to engage with trusted advisors. Now, I'm a trusted advisor. I'm a coach, but there's a lot of different ones. So you have CPAs, and you have attorneys, and you have all of these different resources that are out there. The thing that you have to do is get out and engage. You can't isolate. If you isolate, then everything will go away. I mean, you get stuck in your head and you can't figure out right from wrong, different, you won't see the other perceptions. You have to get out and develop your network and leverage your network of trusted advisors. And you got to manage your mental health and your attitude. So if you don't manage your mental health and your attitude, and again, if you isolate, that doesn't help. Then I think you're headed down a bad rabbit hole. But you're going to have to pivot, and you're going to do that with trusted advisors.
People have been listening to you up to this moment. Perhaps they want to know what they can benefit from you more. You offer coaches, you offer training, you have a book for sale. Tell them, where can they find you, and what do you have for them to benefit from?
So my website is businesswit.com, www.businesswit.com. Just the word business with my last name in it. And on there, you can get a free copy of my book, Checkmate. You can buy my book on Amazon if you look up author John Whitt, but you can get a PDF copy of my book at no cost on the homepage. Just you'll have to scroll down a little bit, but you'll see where you can sign up for it. Then I also have another book coming out. I'm actually writing it right now. It's called Frustration Giants, and it's all about this period of time. It's about the frustrations that come when change happens, when change is thrust on you and you're not really excited about it. And Frustration Giants, I leveraged the story of David and Goliath, right? So David was the young guy, and he was able to kill the giant. And understand that these frustration giants, whenever the world moves into, or you move into, a path of uncertainty, then things like frustration start to happen because you don't know what to do or how to do it or where to do it. And these giants, they come by. So there's isolation, right, which is trying to tell you that you don't need to do anything and you don't need to trust anybody else. It's all in your own head. That's absolutely wrong. You got to fight that giant. Doubt, right? Should I do this? Should I do that? There's doubts that you have to deal with. There's the unwillingness to change, or what I call the laziness giant, because there's work and effort to change. There's the double-mindedness giant, where you focus on one thing and then another and another. You're trying to do too many things at once. And ultimately, there's this one that's really debilitating, is the fear of rejection, right? Your new idea, your new concept, it's not going to work. I'm not going to go out there. I'm not going to do that thing. These are the mental giants that they basically undermine the foundation of your thinking. And if you don't know how to fight them and kick them out, kick those thoughts out of your head, then you're going to be stuck. They're going to continually make your head spin. And so what I did is I wrote this book. I actually produced this video series back in 2018. But with this last year, I said, I'm going to write a book. And so, I've kind of put that whole system together. And then there's some worksheets on how to deal with each one of those particular frustration giants, because it's at the core. It's at the very root cause of our success. And so you can go to frustrationgiants.businesswit.com, and you can sign up for that book. Now, it's not done, so you can pre-sign up. It doesn't cost anything, but you can pre-sign up so that when it's ready, or as I produce excerpts, you'll get a copy of it.
Fantastic. In fact, I'm looking up to that book. When it comes, we are going to have to talk about it again, because there is a lot of things you have said that are going into there. All right. Now, John, we have come to the end of the podcast, and I want your final word for the people. Because basically I've talked about a lot of things within the area of business, the tips, what we need to do, what we should avoid, so that we can continuously remain in business, we can remain afloat in our business pursuit. So what would be your final message now to the people? Maybe this is the only part they see in the video, at least they still get your message to them. Please go ahead.
Well, so I think, never give up. Identify what your dreams are and try to get better every single day. Try to achieve those dreams every single day. Don't give up. Don't quit. And I believe that faith is the key. I think, you have to have faith in yourself, but faith in God, that God is here. God is looking forward to you delivering the goods that you were created for. And that it's always out there. It's always available. He's always on your side. His love never fails. And he will guide you. Even when you think you're at the lowest point, God is still there to help you. And that faith is the thing that will overcome all the adversity that the earth, the world throws at you. Have faith.
I really want to thank you, John, for the time and for the sharing. This has been really very rich at this moment that you share with me here. I try to explain different part of the business pursuit, what we need to do, how do we need to comport ourselves in the area of business. I really appreciate it, and I believe that our audience have also appreciated it a lot. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewanfo. Thank you so much for listening and talk to you in the next episode.